Well, good afternoon. My name is Julia Schickel, and I am here to give you a little intro to the journaling, visual journaling for stress relief and spiritual growth. And I'm having some technical issues, so that's why you're getting to see hands and sketchbooks and not me. But really, it's about the sketchbooks anyways. So, today I'd like to just share a few things about my sketchbooks that are going to inform the activities that I'm going to be demonstrating each week and give you an idea of maybe some things you might like to explore and experiment with in your own books this week as we're getting ready. So one of the things is covers. So this one, I used a recyclable bag. So you can see here the handle, and I used, I probably used a gel medium on this one, but Mod Podge works, any heavy duty glue. So that just got the front and the back. The handle's non-functional, by the way. This book here, I ended up doing a collage with Mod Podge of tea bag tags and fortune cookies on this side. And then this side was built out of fabric. As I was busy working on sewing different projects, I would put a little scrap that I couldn't use in the project on this side. Another option could be stickers. I have several different stickers I picked up. These were napkins that I put on with probably Mod Podge or gel medium type thing. And then I'm seeing what looks like clear packing tape over top. This was a packing tape that had a pattern on it. More stickers on the back. And this was an acrylic transfer of some kind. So a couple of things that you might think about setting up for yourself. I love pockets. So this is a Tyvek material pocket that was marbleized and then glued in here, and I just collect little bits and pieces that I might use in collages at some point. Something else that you might like to do depending on what you want to do. So this was from a calendar. It's also a pocket. I think it opens this way. Yep. There are a few little objects in there. This book has a calendar at the beginning. So the first set of 12 pages, so 1 and 2, each one I did the calendar for the month, and I kept track of the projects that I was making that month. I sort of did a little diary of what I did each day that was art related and how much I'd spent on different art materials. Became a project. So, and then each one got a collage of some kind that went with it, or doodles in there. So, and a number of these things we'll be looking at. Zentangles and patterns, collaging, soul collages, watercolor techniques. There are a number of different watercolor techniques that I'll go over. More collaging. Catalogs are fabulous. Let's see, what else was in here? Oh, altering your pages. So these can be fun. You can do them intentionally for a specific purpose, or like this one, I put it in there and the page before it and after it have nothing to do with the holes, but it was kind of fun, and then they got incorporated into that. Where else was it in this one? Is this one the other one with the... Oh, 3D things can be fun. They can also be a little bit awkward and create thickness, but if you don't mind that, play with it. They can become pockets, places to hide things. They can become little places to put a secret message. Changing the shape of your pages. So this one was trimmed with a paper cutter that had a decal edge to the paper cutter. Let's see here. Another set of pages that were altered, cut on the edges, torn on the edges. These 2 pages folded in half. These things can be done intentionally. They can also be done at random. So like taking a random page in your book and just putting those in there and then finding them or discovering them as you go along. In terms of the journaling process, there's a couple different ways that we will explore to go into this. So this page is a mixed media, colored pencil, the collage from a calendar, and then this sort of free writing that follows the form of the page, right? Not necessarily meant to be read by anyone, not meant to be read by myself even necessarily. The process is writing the words and thinking through it, and sometimes that creates a texture, a pattern, and an artwork of its own. And so the words were important in the moment as I was writing them and going through the process, but in the future, not so much. However, I could go through and look for little phrases that are my own phrases that I might incorporate into something else or inspire something else. Another option for altering pages, I'd found these leaves, cut out the shape, glued the pages together, and these were with packing tape, and this is a vellum. So different ways. My books are not strictly journal. They're personal journal, but they're also planning. Here was planning for this wedding announcement and brochure for my cousin. So thinking about the symbolism and everything in there. This one looks at gardening in connection to land. Doodles, just sitting and making marks with a theme. Mandalas and labyrinths will be a part of what we look at one point. So here again, from art history from there. Labyrinths can be elaborate like this one, or I will also share a more simple way of doing a labyrinth. My books tend to go to museums with me, where I'm making notes about what I'm seeing in the art museum. They are places where I take notes from classes that I'm taking. And all of these things might at some point inform a future artwork, but not necessarily. These books are not intended necessarily to be a finished artwork. So my goal is not that, oh, I'm going to have this book published, and so every page has to be beautiful. This is just about putting ideas down. Box journaling is another strategy for doing your journaling notes, and this is a little bit more formal, a little more organized. I say a little bit because mine tend to flow into each other. Sometimes the pages will be left unfinished. Something I do encourage you to take time to do is get to know your paper. So every sketchbook, every paper is different. And so I had markers that I hadn't used in a long time, didn't know about them. I wanted to find out, how would they respond to the paper? Are they going to bleed into each other? Are they going to bleed through the paper? So this was my sacrificial paper. I was also playing with this technique here, how to do that, so alternating the page. So if you're concerned about bleeding through while you're testing, do put a paper underneath to check it out so that you don't go into other pages. For some people, having that come through from one page to another is significant. For other people, not so important. I tend to work on both sides of my pages, the exception being there's a random empty page here, right? But it tells you something about your paper, about your book, about your materials. So this was exploring ink from an ink jar. So what happened? Oh, it bled through. That led me to discover that if I put watercolor on the page, when I use the ink on the page now, it no longer bleeds through. So again, these are not meant to be final artworks. they're meant to have mistakes. They're meant to be works in progress. They're meant to be places where you're exploring, experimenting. You're going to find that things are unfinished. You're going to find that things are idea starters that are going to inform other artworks later, or other writing pieces if you're a writer. They're going to have recipes. They're going to have ideas. They're going to have moments of wow. This was in response to a meeting that I had at school. I doodled while I was in the meeting and then thinking about the words to go with it. If you're using acrylic paint and even some watercolors, you want to think about thickness. Same with collage as well. But thickness of the paint, sometimes things will not dry fully or ever. So these pages will always stick because they're a little bit thick. Okay. So just thinking about exploring different ways to express your ideas, your emotions, practicing techniques. So here I'm practicing more realistic, I should say, portrait drawing. Here, more of an abstract, but fully expressive, just, in a different way. Playing with ideas of color and words and symbolism, expression, poetry. You might choose to make some kind of accountability grid to track a goal that you have. So this were some goals that I had that for different things. Neurographic art is something that we'll play with. Let's see here. Here's another series of pages where I altered the page. It's a place for asking questions, connections between symbols. Both animals, colors, shapes are all very symbolic through art history, but they're also personally symbolic. So what are the symbols that are personal to you? Who are some of your artist mentors? What are some artworks that you connect with personally? Or if you're more into writing, maybe, who are your writing mentors? Who are people you connect with as a writer that inspire you? This is my most current book. The paper is very different from the paper in the previous books. This paper is a lot softer. It takes the watercolor in a very different way. I'd encourage you to start thinking about mantras, phrases and affirmations that encourage and inspire you, and how you can incorporate and include them. Lists, I love lists. They show up in all of my books in all sorts of different ways. Again, unfinished idea. Maybe there'll be another one here eventually, maybe not. It's okay, because this is just a book where I am putting down ideas and playing. And exploring different types of marks, exploring working with my left hand or my non-dominant hand, working with my right hand. This page and set of pages here, this series is an experiment I discovered. This paper, if it gets really wet, it's going to take out from the binding. It just unhooked from the the thread that holds it together. So these are just a couple things. Playing with marks that your brushes make is an excellent way to start to get to know your tools. I have a whole page in the other book where I just used ballpoint pens and explored each of the ballpoint pens and making marks like this. And what does this one do? And what does this one do? And sort of making a list that way. So those are the books. Materials and storage of materials. I love yogurt containers. I love ball jars. I love tea canisters. So that's how I store my stuff right now. And I keep all my water soluble, so anything that if you add water to it, it's going to bleed and flow like watercolor. All my ballpoint pens are together in one container. I keep my permanent, not water soluble markers in another container. I like to sort my brushes because, like lists, sorting is sort of like lists, so I can find the brush I want. These are plain old Crayola markers. These are Jelly Roll Metallics. They're just fun. They were something that made me happy, and they have glitter in them and sparkle. Brush pens was something I'd gotten as a sample, and so those are in there, and then I bought a set. I love the Micron pens for writing and contour line drawing. The Uniball Signos are one of my favorite for writing words and journaling. They come in different sizes. This is the micro fine point. So it's sort of, you want to figure out what pen works for you. This is another one that's really nice for both drawing and writing, the Staedtler pigment liners. Right now, my current favorite for a white pen is the Jelly Roll white pen. I have these other ones that I got impulsively because they're click pens and I like the click sound. They have a little finer point, so it's a little harder to use. I don't necessarily have a favorite glue per se. I've been using this Yoo-Hoo Twist glue recently. I'm pretty sure I got it from Michael's, but I haven't looked for it recently. If you're doing lots of small collage stuff, these glue pens, and there are a couple different brands out there. These are both Zig. These are a lot of fun to use. Basic Fiskars, I've had these for about 15 years. They're used to cut the flowers, they're used to cut the vegetables, they're used to cut Puzzle Bob's hair, multi-purpose. The other tool that I love are these water pens. You put water in the handle of them here, they twist off and you just fill it with water. And then you can use them with your water-soluble materials. So I can fill it with water and I can use it with my watercolor. So I can just squeeze, water comes out at the, of the bristle part, and I can put water. I could use a watercolor crayon or a watercolor pencil and draw with the pencil first and then paint over top, and it gives a watercolor effect. So, that is the brush pens, or brush paint brushes, water paint brushes. So you want to get to know your materials and find out what's going to work best for you and sort of play with them. Think about what purpose or goal you have for your book, and is there a focus that you want to have? Are you looking to practice techniques? Are you looking to put a lot of ideas down? Are you looking to document moments and experiences? So just like my books go to the art museum, they went to my cousin's concert. Again, lists, look at that, lists, what a surprise. Quotes that are inspiring. This was a really fun book. I don't know where I got it, but it had a plain page on this side and then the lined side on the other one. Experimenting with the different colors. So your book is what you make it. It's yours. So please, I look forward to seeing you next week for a full session and sharing some watercolor techniques and going more in depth on the journaling aspect. So thanks for joining me and have a great rest of your day.